Hello and welcome to the agenda with me, Graham Hughes, and Phil Morehouse of A Different Bias fame. How you doing, Phil? You all
I'm
right?
doing well, yes.
Good. Who's that behind you? What's going on?
Louise Haig, Transport
Transport.
Secretary.
I just learnt that.
Transport Secretary.
I can't.
She's very
I'm totally across
keen
my
on
brief.
railways.
Uh, uh,
You and her have something in common there.
and she's also a redhead by the looks of things. Although it
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
look
not
it doesn't
actually
look
a
real.
natural colour.
Oh, disgraceful. Yeah. So what's the plan? What's the plan,
So we
Stan?
know, in terms of where we were at the election, we know that the plan is to bring rail companies into public hands as and when their contracts expire, which is like it's the slow route to nationalisation that doesn't lose you the election. And it's the low hanging fruit because, unlike a lot of our public services, railways were never properly privatized. Like, well, for rail companies, at least, it was rolling contracts. So it's easy to do that. The downside, or at least the trade-off, should we say, not a downside, but the trade-off to that is, so there's one rail company where the contract expires this October. So they need to get moving on the legislation for this. That's why it's expected to be in the King's Speech and something that they push over summer. Not that there's much of summer to go, but so they'll have like
we haven't had much of a summer.
Yeah. So there's going to be a 4-week
this morning.
There's a 4-week recess, but that still doesn't give very much time. But they need to get going on that. But there's like one contract coming up in October, and then there's a few more next year, and there's like a few the year after. But there's some contracts that run to 2030, so that's into the next Parliament.
Right.
So Louise Haig is looking at this because she's quite keen on her railways. And she says, well, look, the problem, ultimately the problem with a privatized public service, like, even if it's properly regulated, it's more expensive for the customer because you've got to add that layer of profit. But the way our privatized public services work is it's completely profit above service every time. The service can go to hell.
Yeah.
So she wants to improve rail services more quickly. So she has apparently she's seeking legal advice on at what point is the service so bad that these companies are in breach of contract, with a view to terminating contracts early if they don't book their ideas up.
Fantastic.
So essentially, she's going to be meeting rail bosses next week, I think. But she's going to be meeting with all rail bosses, including the boss of Network Rail as well. So it's not just the rail companies. And she's basically going to be setting out a few things in terms of, like, we want this standard of service to improve. And we're going to do everything we legally can to make you choose between improving that service or just giving up your contracts early, and we'll sort it out.
Fab.
How would you like that?
I like those apples.
In so many departments as well. I mean, if we look at that, the water bills, when they went up yesterday, that was going to happen regardless of who was the government. But if it had been the Tories still in power, that would have been the end of it. Like, water bills going up, that's it. Whereas with Labour in power, Steve Reid, Secretary of State of DEFRA, has said, I've met with all the water company bosses. I've told them about the changes that are coming. And the money that is earmarked for the investments that should have been taking place over the last 40 years, if they think they can just spend that how they like, they've got another thing coming. That money is going to be properly audited and ring-fenced.
Yeah.
And they will spend it for that purpose. And anything that's left over, not bonus time, it goes back to the customer.
Fab.
So they're avoiding the temptation for these water companies to do it on the cheap in order to maximize their profits, because I'm not saying none of the money in these raising water bills goes to profits, because some of it would have just been like inflation-linked rises and stuff. But the money that is specifically for investment, that the water companies say they need for investment, it's like, okay, you say you need that for investment, so that's what it's going to be for, and we're going to audit it, and you're not spending it on anything else.
Fantastic. So yeah, again, hitting the ground running. Can we talk about how the other parties have hit the ground face first? In hilarious fashion, we've got Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman, handbags at dawn.
Yeah.
No love lost between those two women. And now we've got Ben Habib and Richard Tice going at it over RefUK. I mean, I was expecting this of the Tories, the infighting, But you predicted that reform would collapse like a wet
Yeah.
cake as soon as they got into Parliament. So
They're just rich playboys. And there's Lee Anderson. Lee Anderson's the only one who's sort of, doesn't really fit. He's not a millionaire.
Did you see that comment about, like, when a kid in school is a bit slow, a bit naughty, so the teacher gives him a pointless job like pencil monitor just to keep him occupied? In other news, Lee Anderson's just been appointed chief whip of 5 people.
Yeah, let's see what that. So here's the situation. People keep saying they've got like 5 MPs. They've technically got 6 because Jim Allister of the TUV, who are the loony. They're the ones that are loonier than the DUP.
Loonier than the DUP. That's quite a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, the TUV splintered off from the DUP because the DUP weren't loony enough. They're basically the Northern Irish version of Reform UK. So it makes sense that they sort of teamed up. Although there'll be no love lost between Nigel Farage and Jim Allister, because even though Reform UK, when Richard Tice was still leader, formed this official pact with the TUV, because people are saying, oh, you say you Reform UK, but you're only standing candidates in Britain. What's going on? So they formed this pact with the TUV to pretend that they were UK wide. And but it's more than just sister party. Like in Northern Ireland, you would say the sister party to the Conservatives is the DUP and to Labour is the SDLP. But they're still different parties, right? There's just some cooperation there. But they formed this formal pact. Jim Allister has now agreed to take the whip because Nigel Farage basically promoted his opponent, Paisley. So that caused a bit of a stink, and Richard Tice and Ben Habib both had to come out saying, no, we've got a formal pact with TUV, right? We're supporting their candidates. So Jim Allister wins. He's agreed to take the whip. So here's the thing. So Lee Anderson, chief whip, right? Chief whip, as if they've got any other whips. So Nigel Farage is the leader. So he doesn't whip Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage gives Lee Anderson his instructions.
Yeah.
Richard Tice is the deputy leader now, not Ben Habib, who didn't win a seat. So those two don't get whipped because they make the decisions. Then you've got Lee Anderson. Obviously, he's not going to whip himself unless he gets into that. Unless he, got so close to the Tories while he was with them, he's into self-flagellation now. So that basically leaves Rupert Lowe, who's another millionaire playboy. The other guy who won in Essex, I haven't bothered to learn his name. He's another one. And Jim Allister. Now, Jim Allister don't take instructions from anyone. He's crazy. It's like trying to give instructions to Suella Braverman, right? So good luck trying to whip any of those people because the 2 other millionaire playboys probably won't turn up, and Jim Allister will do what he wants. Yeah, and their interests don't align. Jim Allister's interest is purely about his extremist version of unionism in Northern Ireland. It's all he's bothered about. He didn't give a shit about small boats or anything like that. I don't give a crap. So their interests are not going to align. So I actually said to Lee Anderson, I replied to him, I said, have fun trying to whip Jim Allister, and can you please record it for me? But it's an absolute joke. Yeah. But Reform UK are they're just bored. They're just bored millionaires. That's all they are.
Well, Rupert Lowe went to Radley College.
Something to do.
Radley College, independent boarding school. It's
some reason I can't hear anything now.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me now? This is why I prefer the earbuds. If I don't talk very often, Phil's headset turns off. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Okay, if Graham's talking, I can't hear him.
I am talking. I think people. Hello. Oh dear. Go back to your other headphones. I prefer them anyway. Because they don't turn off. They've turned off. Phil's going to sort that out while I read your comments. Hello to Yoni in the chat. We've got Gareth. We've got Michael Warner. We've got Vendetta. We've got Daniel saying good afternoon. We have Yoni saying splitters. We've got number 3 saying, I expect water companies will simply increase their declared investment costs to make more profits, then pay bonuses from those. All audited, but there are ways to cheat. Yeah. Someone was saying they'll probably just spend it all on fancy offices rather than actual infrastructure. That's probably true as well. SDLP follow the Labour whip in Westminster. That's from Gareth. Less of a whip than he is a strap, says Yoni. Johan is saying maybe they should call 30p Lee's position the inflatable bladder instead of the whip. Nick Wilson saying Habib having a hissy fit as he realised he joined a limited company, not a political party, is peak irony. Perhaps Ben Habib will split off.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just try. Well, hopefully Graham's rabbiting on.
Oh no, Phil, come back. Hello, Phil, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. What have you pressed?
I accidentally muted the channel that goes through to you. Not the channel that goes through to everybody else, but just the one that goes. I don't even know how I did that. Because it was on this screen over here. I wasn't even looking at that screen. I was fiddling around with this screen. I must have pressed it must be like the space button or something. Maybe you press the space button.
You've got too many controls. Maybe you should just not.
Too many controls. Anyway, so we got Will there. Hello, Will. Who's saying afternoon, guys. And Duke Vengeance is saying, why is my anger so angry? Well, Duke, there is a lot of things to be happy about this week. Labour have made a lot of good moves. Although today, I think Wes Streeting has made a terrible move because he says that he's going to bring this puberty blocker legislation. Oh, well, it's a temporary ban at the moment. He's going to bring it into law. Have you read anything about this?
All I know is there's a court case today. So until that's done, I don't know anything. At the same time, I have no idea why Labour would even be messing about with that. It was a totally uncontroversial medical issue for like decades.
Yeah. And for a tiny, tiny proportion of the population.
Yeah.
And the fact that cisgender kids can still get the puberty blockers, but trans kids can't.
And more importantly, since the government have been shitty about it over the last few years, there's been a massive rise in suicides of young trans people who would otherwise have been receiving that treatment.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's very frustrating. Someone's saying, Roger was saying, were you both audible? Yeah, you can hear us both, but we couldn't hear each other. And that was my fault. I accept responsibility. Captain Bart Robert, thank you so much for the first super chat of the show. How long is the election for the new Tory leader going to take? A lot longer, I hope.
Well,
won't it? Like
there's a section of them that want it to take a long time, and there's a section that wants it to be done quickly. Obviously, those on the far right, because we're just all assuming that the new leader will be someone. It's not going to be Suella Braverman; she's burnt her bridges now. But it would be someone like Kemi Badenoch or Priti Patel, maybe Robert Jenrick. So we're looking at these sorts of figures. Even though Robert Jenrick, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have described him as being far right, but he's taken the king shilling on that one. And that is because none of them even bothered to try and dig in and help their party in the election. They all started their pitches for leadership a long time ago, so they're well established amongst the memberships, and they've been getting plenty of coverage in the media. So they've been running their own leadership campaign when everyone else, like the so-called grown-ups, were trying to go, hang on, can we try and actually survive the election first? So the so-called One Nation Tories have not really been doing that, so they're well behind. So they would what they want is for the leadership contest to actually go beyond the conference season. So they want actually for the candidates to present themselves at conference and stuff, and appeal to members that way. But realistically, what they know is they want this to be done over a longer period of time. Now, they may not get their wish because there are a lot of arguments against that. The ones who want the election more quickly will be arguing that Rishi Sunak does not want to hang about that long, so they'd have to end up with an interim leader. And also until they've got a new leader, they can't start holding Labour to account, which I think is probably a bit of a bullshit argument because there's nothing to hold Labour to account for at the moment. They can make their arguments.
Yeah,
they can do that anyway. They can go, Ed Drilly Band is costing us a load of
drills a band.
Huh?
Ed drills a band.
He's going to cost 200,000 jobs in Aberdeen. It's like, no, mate.
No.
Or moaning about, oh, they're releasing prisoners early. It's like, yeah, do you know what you did? Do you know what the Tories have been doing for 9 months? They see Labour at the moment are planning on releasing these before, like the prisons are going to get full again on like the 1st of August-ish. So Labour is saying, right, well, let's actually work out who to release. Because the Daily Express go, oh, they're going to release violent criminals. Like, no, the whole point is to not do that.
The Daily Telegraph had that on the front cover today. It said they are releasing violent criminals, which is absolutely 100% what they're not doing.
Exactly. They've actually said that. So that's a deliberate lie. And the thing, but what the Tories did is they did that because what happened, what they did, they didn't go, oh, the prisons are getting full. What we do? Oh, we're going to have to release some prisoners. They waited for the prisons to be full. Yeah. Then they told judges to stop sentencing people while they sorted it out. So then they spent a couple of weeks releasing prisoners early, a lot more indiscriminately because they're doing it in a rush, then saying to judges, right, you can now sentence them. Then it got full again, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
No plan to expand prison. I mean, you've got several options. You either expand your prison capacity. Well, the Tories had no plans to do that. Or you reduce the number of people who should be sent to prison. You change sentencing guidance to reduce it. But no, the Tories not only didn't do that, they've kept going on, oh, we should actually put these people in for prison for longer and these people in for prison for longer. It's like, so you're increasing the prison population.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm putting people in jail for stupid reasons. Nonsense. I mean, there's a hangover from the last Labour administration, which is that there are people with indefinite sentences.
Yeah.
Some of these people have been in prison now for like 20 years for stealing a loaf of bread. I know that sounds like I'm exaggerating, but that's pretty much what's happened because they've been given an indefinite sentence.
It is.
The Tories dropped it. They weren't interested in it. So they don't do it anymore. They don't give out those sentences anymore. But the
some
people who are
still in it.
Yeah, but the people who caught up with it, just like the Windrush generation again, the Tories just went, oh, well, if you're stuck in the system now, who cares? It's like a Kafkaesque nightmare with the Tories being in charge. So hopefully Labour will have a look at those indeterminate sentences and just get people out. Because
well, I think with James Timpson as Prisons Minister, I mean, obviously, he has got his work cut out because he's got a rather more sensible attitude to prisons, which is out of step with public opinion. Like I keep saying, the problem with public opinion in this country, it's all about crime and punishment rather than, proportionate and rehabilitation. Yeah. And the problem with this attitude of crime and punishment is you're wanting people to commit crimes. Therefore, you're wanting people to be the victims of crime.
Yeah.
But it's like, shouldn't we want fewer people to commit crimes? And then when they do commit crimes, think, okay, so this person's committed a crime, they'll need to be punished, because we don't want them to do it again. Now, these people are violent, so they have to be locked up. These other people may not be violent, but they are definitely going to commit another crime if we just leave them on the streets. So, okay, they have to be locked up. But then there's these other people that did a thing. They need punishing for it. It wasn't violent. It was stupid. The fact that they've been convicted and are going to be punished will give them pause for thought. They'll not do it again. So we punish them in the community, which is James Simpson's argument, and then they can still work. So instead of us paying a fortune to house them in what is effectively an academy that turns amateur criminals into professionals, we leave them at home looking after the kids. They still do their job, boosting the economy.
Yeah.
So we have a lower cost for prisons and a better base for our economy. I mean, also, it should be a no-brainer. And you don't have as many victims of crime because a person that's dealt with appropriately is less likely to reoffend, which means fewer victims of crime.
Yeah.
And no one explains this to the public.
Mental health is a huge issue here. We've got Gareth T, who I assume is a prison officer. Just so you know, we had a suicide on Wednesday. I'm so sorry, mate. And an attempted one yesterday. Had to talk one down from jumping. Need to sort mental health out big time. Plus, there's no support for prison officers. You're absolutely correct, Gareth. It's one of those things. Like I know someone who had what we would probably call a mental break. Not particularly violent, but resisted arrest. It's one of those where you make a phone call and say, this person needs help. And instead of mental health services coming around and sitting with them and calming them down and helping them out, especially when they've got a diagnosed mental health disorder, the police come and arrest you. They strip search you. They throw you into a cell for the night and leave you on your own to think about what you've done. I mean, I couldn't think of anything more crazy to do to someone who is obviously in need of help, and the person making the emergency phone call is saying, this person needs help. Can you come and help them? And this is the way our society, what we've built, helps people.
That is specifically here. I will point out in Scotland, where Scottish police, they work on the assumption that when they're dealing with a crime, they actually work on the assumption first that it's a mental health issue, and then if it's not, it's not. But they have that very much in mind.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
That's just not here.
No, here it's all crime and punishment. Lock them up, lock them up, lock them up. And the Tories bragging about bringing crime down when all they've done is taken the fraud statistics out of the overall
They say, oh, we've got crime down if you don't count all the crime that went up.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Fantastic.
Thanks for that.
But
it became comical when they were actually trying to argue about how much crime came down in 2020. Is that when people were allowed out?
Yeah.
Crime went down when people... In fact, actually, you just talked about reported crime, because obviously there were huge fears. Even Dominic Cummings was saying this in the COVID inquiry. Huge fears about an increase in domestic abuse at those times, but you didn't care. The government didn't care about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that's gone through the roof in recent years is we say domestic abuse is a nice way of putting it. It's men attacking women in their own homes.
Almost
in one place.
Exclusively, yeah. I mean, there are some that's the other way around.
Yeah, but they're very, very few and far between. And, as someone who's been in a unhappy relationship, can I put it that way, in the past, I always knew at the end of the day, being a man, I was always bigger. I always had that, advantage of physicality, if anything came to it, whereas women don't have that.
No.
And the way that the response to this horrific crime that's been committed this week, a man has killed 3 women out of revenge by the looks of things.
Yeah.
And then looks like I think he's tried to kill himself, and that's why he's in hospital. And then the newspapers and the government, not the government, sorry, the talking heads or whatever, they're saying, oh, it's because of crossbows.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I do think that crossbows should be regulated like any other firearm. However, that's not the underlying cause of this crime.
If it wasn't allowed a crossbow to use a knife.
Yeah.
So, you're not going to ban knives. I mean, you can ban some types of knives. If someone wants to take a kitchen knife and do the same job, they can do the same job. God knows, I don't even know why they would use a crossbow. It's like no one needs a crossbow. So if you want to go, okay, probably we don't actually need crossbows. Let's ban them. I don't care. But that wouldn't have stopped these murders. No,
not at all. What might have stopped the murders is basically better protection for women in general. This guy's brother murdered someone, and he's in jail now. He's serving a 20-odd year sentence for murder. And I think there's an argument to be made to say, who brought these kids up? And do they deserve to be put on trial for their failure? I mean, if I said this in the show this morning, but if they just gave their kids unconditional love and support, then that's one thing. But if they abuse their children and then their children grew up to be murdering adults, then I think that the parents have to take some responsibility in that. You could argue that there's 4 people who are now dead who would otherwise be alive between those 2 brothers had the dad not been the way he was. I don't know the actual ins and outs of that particular situation, but it's worth looking at. Gareth says prohibition also a major issue. Calls are 25% of our population are for nonsense reasons, including one who called whilst in hospital, not for attending probation, passing a problem on. Yeah, that's true. Christopher says it looks like an ex-boyfriend couldn't handle a breakup, so sought revenge on her ex and mothers and the sister. Yeah, Christopher, it's not helped, is it, by the increase in misogynistic language from the likes of Tate and that creepy loser Fox guy and others who just allowed to write the most vile things about women on TikTok, Twitter, on social media, and there's no one stopping them at the moment, especially on Twitter. It seems they can write whatever the hell they like.
Yeah.
Might get a community note.
Well, again, this is another classic case of, I mean, you know, Twitter would be a really, really good public service.
Mm.
And you know, I keep saying, it would be brilliant if it was run by, say, the UN. It would be a superb public service, but
Yeah.
it's run by a man-child.
Yeah, it is.
It's privately owned, not at all properly regulated. The best thing about it is it's still, you know, it has the community notes. They haven't disappeared anywhere. They're quite good. But
yeah.
other than that, it's just like, it's a free for all.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it does push certain lines as well. It's not, actually, I say it free for all, it's not actually quite true. It does deliberately push certain views that Musk wants pushing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which are always toxic. And it's always, you know, those lines that sell. We were talking about that the other day, weren't we? About the newspapers will go after reform because that's interesting, whereas green policy isn't interesting to them because they know that reform is going to be doing something mad or horrible, or it's going to enrage people, and that clickbait, that enraging engagement is something that they want to that they can actually monetize and make money out of. You make money out of rage. You can't make money out of people going, yeah, that'd be a good idea. One Aggie Pagan, I missed your super chat earlier, sorry mate. It's a National Wealth Fund, looks like a PFI style thing.
It would do, yeah. I mean, so my attitudes on that are, so like, the way I look at it is, if private companies can look at a situation and go, okay, we could make money out of this, so could the government. And you would say, so why doesn't the state just carry out that investment itself? Because all we're talking about is investors here. We're not talking about the people who are pumping this money in are not experts in it. They're just providing the money. It'll be different people who provide the actual expertise and build the business, and the government could have taken those people on. So you'd think, so why don't the state just carry out the investment, then get all of the return? And the reason is, and this is where, you know, it's like one of those things where I say, I know I'm not going to get everything I want, because I know the public aren't with me on a lot of things. The way to do that is to borrow. And the way to get in a lot of that investment is to borrow quite heavily. And then you lose the next election. And so my attitude to things that are, as you say, like I say, it isn't actually PFI. There was an important difference, I think, with PFI, but it is very like it. And I understand the dilemma there. You've got this situation where you need a mad amount of investment to come in. And, you know, if private investors think there's a return in it, then there would be a return for the government. And so if the government just funded it itself, we would get all of that return. But we know that has to come from borrowing. We know that the public aren't there. They don't agree with that. And that's unfortunately the political reality. So it's one of those things where I hold my nose and hope that in the longer term, it doesn't, that it's just something to get things going. And that if we can get electoral reform and a better sort of politics, it's something we wean ourselves off. That's my hope. But I know, you know, my position on politics is, I know I'm out of kilter with the majority of public. I know that. So I know it's one of these things there's a chunk of things Labour will do that I'll be really happy with. I've been quite happy with quite a lot of things they've done this week. There will be things they do that I think, okay, that's pretty decent. Could be better, but, you know, it's not bad. There will be things that they'll do that I'll go, well, okay, that's better than what we had, but it's not really good enough. And then there are things that they will do, and people are pointing out the West Streeting thing, that I will just go, you didn't need to do that. You're not even doing that for political reasons. What are you playing?
Absolutely.
And I know that, and I'm prepared for that. And,
this is
I have to agree with it.
This is what a lot of my trans friends were worried about with West Streeting because of what he said before the election. And now he's just absolutely done exactly what everyone thought he would do.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable. And I know you shouldn't think, oh yeah, all gay people think the same way. But, you know, for him to be a left-winger, part of the Labour Party, and gay, and do this to fellow people in the LGBT community, is just, I don't
But
know.
the
I don't
worst
get it,
thing for
Phil.
me
Don't get it.
is that it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary for a number of reasons. First of all, people actually don't give a shit. If he'd have actually, so take a slightly different example yesterday in terms of court cases. So the government was going to court over the Cumbria mine thing,
Yeah.
and the new government now, the Labour government, have actually withdrawn that. So Angela Rayner has basically cancelled that court. So the government are no longer challenging. So she's basically said that planning permission shouldn't have been given for that Cumbrian mine thing. So that's that new coal mine that's finished now. Wes Streeting, could have done the same thing, or at the very least, he could have said, "Well, the court case is now going ahead because it's happening today. Let's just see what the court says, and then we'll review the position next week." But if he'd have just said, "Look, this was the last government's position," it's not even going to be. I mean, I know that the right-wing press would try and make something out of it, but they're raging at so much right now. This wouldn't even, like what? Most people don't even know what it's about. They don't give a shit. Yeah. And it's early in the parliamentary cycle as you can get. So even people who do get a bit outraged, they've forgotten it in a few years' time. Yeah. You're not going to tell me that there's a significant number of voters who at the next election are going, oh, their first week, they allowed puberty blockers again. They don't know what a puberty blocker is. Well, so it's just like on no level does it make any sense.
No, the group bringing the court case is transactual, and if you've seen the episode of The Intersection with Helen Belcher, that's she's in charge of Transactual UK, and the Good Law Project's also involved as well. And it's just, I don't know, it just seems like, why? That's the big question here. Like you say, it's absolutely unnecessary.
I get that there's going to be shitty policies that Labour know are shitty that are political. I don't see how this makes political sense.
Yes, and moving on to that, can we talk about the two-child policy? Actually, I'll just say a few things people have said. Unquiet Badger says, I work for a charitable organisation that helps former addicts, ex-offenders and people with psychological issues. We work in natural settings and the effects are amazing. Fantastic. That's a really good bit of work that you're doing there. But yeah, so many people need help, and it should be society's job to give them the help that they need so they can become an integrated part of society again, instead of locking them away in a cage, which makes no sense to me. Anthony says, has anyone seen the disillusionment honours list? Coffee is now a dame, not a pantomime one, unfortunately. Yeah, and is it Gavin Williamson is now in that? No, Failing Grayling. He's already a sir. No, Failing Grayling, Chris Grayling,
the Lord,
the man who famously bought a ferry company with no ferries and managed to lose an election that he rigged.
Yeah,
he managed to lose a rigged election. Yeah. Chris Grayling, he's now going to be going to the House of Lords. But there you go. Gareth says, we do screen for learning difficulties, but the amount of help is limited due to funding. Our education is good, but it can only do so much. A lot of them simply don't get rules and regulations. That's true. I would like to see, just to go back to prisons for a moment, for people who are in jail or, at risk of going back into jail again and again, education, give them the choice. Do you want to be locked in a box, or do you want to get a qualification? Okay, get a qualification, and we'll provide you what you need in order to sit those exams, get your A levels or GCSEs even, get those qualifications, and then you've got something positive that you can do to give society instead of just letting these people out of jail with nothing, no qualifications, having learned, as Phil said, a few more tricks on the inside and then using them again to commit more crimes. PFI was just off balance sheet borrowing, as it says Katrina. Streeting is only an ally to himself, says Gallifreyan Wren. I can't really argue with that at the moment. And Wango Pagan says, I fear his religious beliefs are partly pushing him this way.
No.
Well, Phil's religious and he doesn't know trans people.
There's nothing at all in the Christian faith about this at all.
He said he struggled coming out as gay because of his Christianity, which is...
It'll be because of his family.
Yeah,
I've known and do know gay people who have very religious families who can't be dealing with that. and it's the family that is the issue, not the religion.
Yeah. Jesus famously said nothing about homosexuality or slavery, unfortunately. But he did say stuff about not getting divorced and remarried, you know. It's funny how all these people like Trump and that go through like wives, like, you know, and no one even mentions that. He mentioned it.
The Christian faith is very much against adultery.
Yes.
In fact, pretty much Donald Trump, there isn't a single one of the 10 commandments. There were more than 10 commandments, but in terms of the 10 key commandments, not a single one he hasn't broken and boasted about breaking.
Yeah. It's quite impressive. Gav is saying, thanks for letting me rant. I really hope things can change. We are only now getting the PPE we should have had as standard, namely batons and PAVA. That's crazy, isn't it? That, you know, people working in prisons with some violent offenders are not given the protection that they should have to do their job.
There's also, like with everything else, there are too few people working in the prison service for the population.
Yeah.
So it's like in anything else, you think about, you know, nurses are stretched too much, teachers stretch too much. I mean, I can talk only from my personal experience of teaching. Like, you know, when I was last teaching full time, which is 2019 now, although I did do some teaching after that part time. And, you know, there was someone who just joined the teaching profession. I was talking to him about the fact. So when I started teaching, basically what happened is that his timetable was 25% bigger than mine was when I started teaching. He couldn't believe it. You know, and you think about, so that's extra classes you're doing and less preparation time that you have.
Yeah.
Which means, of course, less of a life because you do have to prepare for them.
Yeah.
And the pay the pay is lower in real terms, at least it was in 2010. So the conditions had gone down since 2010. And new teachers don't necessarily recognize that. They just think that's what teaching is. But the way teaching is now is worlds apart from what it was in 2010.
Yeah, absolutely.
Worlds apart.
9 worlds from Drew saying far too many Knighthoods make a complete mockery of what that form of patronage even is. It's true. But then, Phil, you feel like all knights were always pirates, weren't they?
They're always bastards. They were always bastards. The original knight was someone who went to the king. The king said, go and break over those peasant skulls. They're not showing due deference. And they would go over and break up those peasant skulls for them. That's a knight. That is what a knight is. So I don't really know why we're surprised. Yeah, that's why I would just say scrap the whole system, start again with a series of completely. I mean, remember, you know, there are people some people are deserving of honors and get those honors. And think about, you know, we are actually excluding a section of society from honors who deserve them. There are not a huge number, but there are some notable examples of, say, Black Britons who've turned down honors because they don't want an honor that has the term British Empire in it.
Yeah.
So why don't we just scrap the whole thing, develop a completely new, modern system of patronage, which
could just change it to British excellence,
politically appointed.
We could just change it to politically appointed. You just say it doesn't stand for that anymore. Do a backronym like they did with DVDs that used to stand for digital video disc, and then halfway through the 90s said, no, it stands for digital versatile disc because they realised they could put data on it and stuff.
But I don't think that would work, in all honesty. I would just
do a backronym.
I mean, let people who've got the honours
leading Britain's conversation.
New one.
What was LBC before? London Borough something? What was LBC? What did it stand for? London Borough Circulation. I don't know. Rachel Harris, thank you very much for the £5 super chat, Rachel. That's very kind. What does Phil think about Fartage presenting again as an MP on Gammon Box News?
I think Phil? It's a useful yardstick for what Labour will do with Ofcom. It's not in, I was just saying to someone in WhatsApp chat, it's not in Labour's interest to allow Ofcom to carry on being shit. So Farage presenting that show, probably it's a useful yardstick. It's something for Labour to go, right, okay, you know, beef up off, like in terms of regulation. Remember, there is regulation for it's press regulation that doesn't exist really. Broadcast regulation does exist. Okay, it could be tightened up, but for the first thing, there's no point in tightening it up until you're enforcing the regulation that exists.
13 counts, I think. Gammon Box News has had now 13, and nothing. Not even a fine.
That's what needs happening. Lisa Nandy is the culture secretary now, which also includes media. So, you know, let's see how that develops. It's not in Labour's interest to allow this to carry on.
Apparently, LBC stood for the London Broadcasting Company. Well, there you go. You learn something every day. Now it stands for Leading Britain's Conversation. So an OBE, instead of standing for the Order of the British Empire, Officer of the Order of the British Empire, it could stand for Officer of the Order of British Excellence, and then that'll work. I think.
Yeah, I think if you keep the name the same, everyone knows what it is, and you're just rebranding.
Yeah. But I mean, I would honestly, and not that I'm ever going to get one, but if someone offered me an MBE, I would probably turn it down at the moment because of the Empire. But if it said excellence, I'd be like, yeah, I'll have that. Just saying.
If any ministers are watching, I wouldn't turn down any honour. But I would just prefer. I understand those who do turn them down, and if the reason they turn them down is because of their origins, then just stop. Let the people who've got them keep them. They still have OB after the name. That's fine. Just just start again from scratch. How hard is it, really? It doesn't cost anything extra to start again. You just call it
make
something
up
else.
Terms. What do you
give
call
it to
it?
different people to appoint. Don't let politicians appoint.
Well, yeah, but I mean, when you got like the New Year's honours and stuff. what's the group? What's the gang that you are letting people into? If it's the Order of British Excellence, then you
don't need them.
Anyway, Brad, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Tradition is an excuse to keep lazy thinkers in line. See honours, Palace Westminster, division lobby voting, pompous state opening of Parliament. Thank you very much for the super chat there. And Gareth T earlier said, I do actually enjoy my job, by the way. It's just tough when you have one hand tied behind your back, talking about working in prisons. And the current ratio is 3 staff to 30 prisoners. My landing has 94 prisoners on it. So 94 prisoners. And what, like 9 staff is that? Jesus. That's not great. If England win the Euros, the Tories will blame it on Labour.
You lose. They're quite happy to blame it on Labour if they win. I have no problem.
Well, I think they'll blame it either way. It will all be their fault. I don't think we're going to win. I mean, we're against Spain. Spain are a bloody awesome team. I mean, we'll have to be do very well. And Nick
is on that. I don't like, and I was alluding earlier to like England fans and like they seem to like watch football for punishment. Like so. And you'll have been the same because you're only a little bit younger than me. So when I was growing up, Labour never got it. We got into a semi-final in 1990, the World Cup.
Labour, you mean the football team?
One, England, in the Euros Labour. In 1996. And that's all we did. For 40 years of my life, all we got to was one semi-final and another semi-final. Since Gareth Southgate's been manager, we've got to a World Cup semi-final and 2 Euros finals. If we lose, I mean, you can't win. You can't go into a tournament thinking you should win all the bloody time. That is way more than we've ever had in the first 40 years of my life under Southgate. Yeah. As soon as BBC report, if we win the final, Southgate will be vindicated. I think he's pretty much vindicated himself already.
Hang on, did we get into the semi-final?
To win a tournament.
Point of order.
Justify yourself.
Did we get into the semi-final? I thought we got knocked out by Croatia in the quarterfinal. In the last World Cup?
No, that was semi-final.
Was that the semi-final we got knocked out?
We would have got to the bloody final if we'd have beaten them.
All right. I stand corrected. I wasn't paying attention, obviously.
That was unfortunately in Russia where we never should have gone. But
yes. Well, and Qatar.
Well, we didn't get to the semi-finals there. So.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. But Qatar was a very horrible place.
We shouldn't. The World Cup should never have been harder with those places. I get that you want to spread it around the world, of course you do, but
no. Johan says, "Footy Tawnies. Belgium has the honour of beating England twice in the same tournament. Cool." And Jamie is saying TWA was a major airline and was bought and remodeled as Trans World Airline because the owner couldn't afford the branding. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. A backronym. Nothing wrong with a backronym. There are loads of things that got backronyms.
When it's a really toxic legacy, I would just scrap it.
Mike Organ says, I'm with you, Phil. In terms of success, very tight between Southgate and Ramsey. If he wins on Saturday, I thought the match was on Sunday. It's on Sunday.
It's Sunday.
Yeah.
If he wins on Saturday, that's why he's won, because Spain didn't turn up.
Yeah.
He's gone, lads, we've got the pitch to ourselves. Bang it in.
Woo!
30-0.
Jump J says, as a German, I would have to say you have very low standards, Phil. Growing up in the 80s, we reached World Cup finals, 3 World Cup finals in a row, and 2 Euro finals in the 90s.
But we don't. In fact, I'll tell you something about German football, right? So what happened was the English FA years ago developed a plan to like make the team really competitive. And then they commissioned this plan, they commissioned this blueprint, and then they never used it. But 2 sporting organizations did. And the 2 sporting organizations were the German FA and the English Rugby Union, who with Clive Woodward, who went on to win the bloody World Cup. Yeah. So a plan developed by the English FA and commissioned and paid for by the English FA was happily used by the German FA and English Rugby Union.
Great.
Not English football.
It's a bit like our transport.
So that's why my standards are low, because our country is full of idiots. So quite frankly, a semi-final and 2 finals for a country of idiots is pretty good going.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Hastings boy wants to know, when's Kunzberg getting her OBE? Never, I hope.
Never.
Anyway, let's. Can we talk a little bit about Suella and I know we talked about this at the very beginning, but Suella and Kemi have been going at it in public. They've been at each other's throats for some reason. Seems like the 2 women don't like each other. The word on the street is that no one likes Suella Braverman. She's got no mates. She's got no mates. She's pissed off all the gay people in the Conservative Party by calling the gay pride flag, what did she call it? Like some disgusting woke, disgusting fappy woke.
The thing is, like, they shouldn't be surprised. She's been a loose cannon. Like, she behaved herself under Boris Johnson because obviously she couldn't challenge Boris Johnson. But as soon as he was gone, she was, I remember even under Liz Truss, like Liz Truss made her Home Secretary. So that was a massive promotion for her. And yet she she used that platform to push for policies that were against Liz Truss's policies. So she was there was no ministerial responsibility.
Yeah.
She was straight in. As soon as Boris Johnson was gone, she was like a dog unleashed, a rabid dog. And obviously she got no better under Rishi Sunak. He was even, he's weak. So, like, no one should be surprised. I've said for a long time, I can believe the members would vote for Suella Braverman because they can usually be relied upon to vote for the craziest option. But, I mean, you won't guarantee it. But the thing is, she's not going to get on the ballot because she's pissed off even the far right. And the ballot, I saw some research that had been done. I don't know, it looks all right. Certainly there's a few people giving it credibility. That actually shows that the way the chips have fallen with the Tory seats won is the balance of the different factions is proportionally the same as it was before. So the far right have not, if they'd have been properly crushed, they would have had a much greater proportion of MPs, but now they haven't. So they're representing, the representation is basically the same. So they're still the crazy wing, and they're the ones who will have a disproportionate amount of power because they've basically got like, a bomb vest on that they're threatening to blow up at any time. Although that might be less of a threat now that they look like they've been in opposition for a while.
I made a reference, a few years ago, I used to get on to, what were they called? The home free counties, the home counties radio, I think it was, or free borough radio or something like that. Quite a lot on the BBC. Talking about Brexit, and the last time I was on, I mentioned the fact that Jacob Rees-Mogg was behaving a little bit like a suicide bomber, and I was never asked back after that. They had to apologise because I had said that on radio. Apparently, you're not supposed to say that on radio. So, just a little input there. And also, sorry to interrupt, but Alec Berwick gave us a super chat a moment ago, and I should have brought it in when we talk about the footy. Thank you very much for the super chat, Alec. Who was PM in '66? It was Harold Wilson. Yeah. What party? It was Labour.
Yeah, people keep saying that, the men's team, because the women's team have won under a Conservative government. Yes. The men's team have only ever won under a Labour government, but then we have only ever had one win. So that's quite a depressing fact.
Also, really. Someone's pointed out that we did get through the semi-finals at the World Cup in 1990 with Gary Lineker and with Gaza.
Yeah, that's what I said. When I was growing up, we had one semi-final in the World Cup and one semi-final in the Euros. That was it. That's all we ever did.
which was 1996.
1996. And then we behaved like dickheads after it. We had an actual riot when we lost that semi-final. I remember it well. You know, the German football team they put out full page ads in the newspapers, because we hosted it that year, thanking us. And I was embarrassed because
I
the
don't
way
remember
we behaved.
that. I remember from that summer is that the clubs could open till 4. Because back in those days, all the pubs closed at 11, and then you had to go to a nightclub that you had to pay to get in. And they were only open till 2 o'clock. And like it just seemed all night at the time. No, I think back it was only a few hours. But because we were hosting the Euros in 1996, they allowed nightclubs to open till 4 o'clock in the morning. So you could, and I did, go to the Crazy House in Liverpool while it was light, because you went in at 10 o'clock and it was still light in June. And you could leave and it was light again. So you completely missed the night in the nightclub. Anyway, great days. Sound check, says Sean. Am I not coming through? Sorry. You are making my point. 1 Hungary is better than 2. Oh, are we talking about splitting Hungary into different countries? 1990, I was up a mountain in Kurdistan, says Captain Bart Roberts, who's been to northern Iraq. I was lining
up outside geography, probably what you would call these days year 9, I suppose.
I was in year 7 in old money. The new money, sorry.
But at that time, it would have been called third year. We didn't have any of this year 7, 8, 9.
First year seniors. Yes, they did. It must have changed when you were in 5th form.
It would have, but in our school, it didn't. So, right. It was like I was in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th year, then lower 6th and upper 6th.
Yeah. Jeannie Bottle saying Maradona cheated England out of finale.
Well, maybe, but it really doesn't. I mean, you say that, okay, all right, that was shit, and that sort of thing happened. But like his next goal was his own goal, and we still could have lost. But it doesn't matter. We nonetheless got to. There were other tournaments where we had a credible chance and then lost, but we got to one semi-final and then another semi-final, and that was it in 40 years. And since in the last 8 years, we've got to a semi-final and 2 finals. I mean, I really don't know why people are moaning.
Hastings boy, Eurovision winners 1997, Labour win 2024, Euro champs ? Maybe that was Katrina and the Waves with Love Shine
a Light.
Shine a Light.
So we had to get an American to win.
Phil's totally on my quiz team now. Mike Organ, I went to live in France.
Literally the only music thing I know.
In 1981, first nightclub we went, we had to leave at 3 a.m. as I wasn't used to anything post 2:30 a.m. Yeah, we had very arcane rules about when things were allowed to be broadcast on the telly, when pubs were allowed to be open, when shops were. Oh, hang on, we still have that one about the shops, don't we? The shops have to close at midnight on Saturday. All the 24-hour supermarkets in the country have to close for some reason.
Well, it's for Sunday trading, isn't it? So the idea of Sunday trading rules was to protect smaller shops because they can open longer on a Sunday. It's supermarkets that are limited to 6 hours.
Yeah. But then my corner shop just does shorter hours anyway on a Sunday because it's a Sunday.
Yeah, ours doesn't. So I suppose it depends where you are, but they've got the option.
But then the smaller shops are also all Tesco Metros now, aren't they?
I don't know whether that counts. I think, it might have, but, a lot of them are. Anyway, I don't know. Ours is open full all Sunday.
Anyway, so Matthias Stammer won the Balloon d'Or as the 3rd defender to ever win it. Beckenbauer won it twice, though. That's some job. Well done, job. Anyway, just to flip back to the Tory party as we were talking about. Do you see them getting their shit together this year? Like, how long do you think it's going to take the Tories now?
I think it's going to take several years. I think, if I was to have a guess, I would suggest that whoever they appoint is likely to be, because they don't actually understand what their problem is. Question time last night, they had George Freeman on as a Tory MP, and he was trying we totally deserve to lose. I get it. We would behave very badly. I'm not saying he was doing a full honesty, but he was at least, and I think, there's a good chance he was being cynical, but he was at least making the right noises. The Conservative Party as a whole is not going to take his lead. So they're going to double down on the crazy. The argument that they weren't crazy enough is going to win, that Rishi Sunak was a Marxist, What was he doing adopting left-wing policies? Like, that is what they're saying. So they're going to double down on the crazy. So therefore, they're going to get someone to lead them who will do that. Whether they're pretending to be mad or genuinely mad is irrelevant. They are unlikely to make much ground because the person they elect as leader is also likely to be incompetent as well as mad. Like I say, if they do elect Kemi Badenoch, honestly, you are going to see, for those who haven't seen much of her, really, you're going to see someone who's as mad as Liz Truss and as shit as politics as Rishi Sunak. If you think that Rishi Sunak was like the lowest of the low for them, no, they had worse ones to go for, and they may well do that. So I don't see them last in the full parliament.
Yeah,
which means they'll then have to get someone else in who will probably it'll be, oh no, we had the right idea, just the wrong person. So I don't see them sorting themselves out. There will come a point where, as long as they keep losing elections, just like last time, they will recognize that they need to at least pretend. But there was an interesting quote from someone writing an article, and I found about it because David Frost was amplifying it. And it's one of those honest Tories, and they're saying it exactly as it is. And this is what they said. The Conservative Party has no centrist roots. Its roots lie in maintaining a hegemony over the right-wing vote, whilst also being able to poach votes from the centre, not the other way around. And that is what they are. Because when, like, David Cameron took over and, he pretended to care about climate change and the old hugger hoodie thing, oh yeah, social cohesion. And it was all lies, because as soon as he came into power, those were not his policies.
Yeah.
And that's what this is actually an honest appraisal of the Conservative Party. It represents the right, but like when the Conservative Party started, there was no left and right, because people who could vote was a very small number of people. They were all landowners. They were all basically, they were in competition with another party, but they were all still right wing. So it was a case of where it was like the liberal right wing. Like the Whig, the Whigs, bizarre. We wouldn't look at them as like that, but they weren't they? They were like the liberals, sort of.
Yeah.
And the Tory stroke Conservative Party after 1834.
Well, the Tories became the Conservatives, and the Whigs became the Liberals.
Yeah. So, but they were all still right. So there was none of this having to like take vote, pretend that you were on someone's side to get their votes, because those people didn't have a vote. Yeah. Whereas now you've got this big centre. Now, since universal suffrage, you've got this big centre block of votes. Most people are around the centre. But the Tories are not interested in delivering for people around the centre. So they just try and con them. They say, oh, yeah, we're totally on board with it. Oh, climate change is very important. Oh, yeah, we absolutely want society working together. Oh, yeah, good jobs, NHS, all the rest of it. And it's all lies.
Yeah.
That is all lies. And so this is a very honest thing. So when they say about poaching votes from the centre, what is poaching? It's taking something you have no right to. Taking something that's not yours without permission. And that's, these are people who are saying the quiet part out loud. This is what most of them do and recognize. I don't doubt there are some genuine Tories but they, like, if you look at, because this particular article is having a pop at people like Rory Stewart, who has now, of course, left the Conservative Party. But Rory Stewart is one of those examples of, like, you could describe him as a genuine person with whom I disagree, but I just see him as one of those who's been conned by his own side.
Yeah.
But most of them know full well that they are representing the right. I mean, the right, not always the far right. They're not all fascists. But they also know that they have no intention of delivering for the centre.
No. I mean, it just seems a bit odd now that the Tories are going to go instead of looking to the centre. But then that's what Labour did. Labour did exactly the same, fell for the same thing. They went to the further left than the centre, and there's no votes there. There's fanatics. There's very, very loud fanatics, but there's no voters. That's the problem. You need the voters to vote for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. You've seen over the last few years. I mean, a load of those votes that Corbyn was stacking up just went to like somewhere else, Green Party, Independents, whatever. And it's like, we want a massive majority. Yeah, I mean, and the problem is none of these people are reflecting on that. They're not thinking to themselves, oh yeah, we're actually quite meaningless together. Maybe we should, because that's where I can talk to these people on domestic policy. If we don't talk about foreign policy or anything or personalities, we'll get on like a house on fire, right? But they don't realize. I realize that I am out on a limb. I don't. My views are not shared by enough people to win power. So therefore, nothing happens if I just stay angry on the left. So what I do is go, okay, well, in order to win power, you need the people in the center, because that's where most people are. And they're going to get most of what they want. And I'm going to get like some of what I want, or what I think is best, should we say. What I want is irrelevant. What I think is best. And that is better than getting nothing. And it doesn't matter what the percentage is, 30, 40, 50%, doesn't matter. All of it is better than 0%, which is what you get under the Tories, which is the alternative.
Michael Warner's asking how many laws can Labour pass in 2 weeks? None.
Ain't got 2 weeks.
0.
Yeah, it will be 0. There's the odd, maybe, because it's not even 2 weeks. So the state opening of Parliament is next Wednesday. Then you've got like a week of debates on the King's speech.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen.
There will be some legislation introduced there's like 1 week before the delayed summer recess. It will be introduced, so we can see the bill, and then it'll be back after in September for another few weeks, and then it's conference season again.
Yeah, so indeed, and I've got my ticket. I'm going to Labour Party conference in Liverpool in September. If anyone wants to join us in that, I think we're going to take over the upstairs at the Ship and Mitre on one of the nights. So keep stay tuned for more information. Brad Jones, who left a message a while ago saying, I went from second year straight to year 9. I did the same thing, Brad. You must be 45. Or 45 this year. One angry pagan. But talking to Nicker, yes. But even that will probably be done incrementally. So not as kick off an argument, playing it quiet on their end while we campaign loudly outside is probably to get a good tactical move. Honestly, we'll have to wrap up in a moment, but everything Labour have done so far in the 1 week they have been in power feels to me like a massive step forward to the 14 years that preceded it. In fact, I would say that it's felt like for the last 14 years, we haven't had a government, because every time something has come up and we said you need to do something, they've gone, we're only the government, what can we do? And then they've whinged and carped and moaned about the fact that they can't do the things that they want to do because somebody's stopping them. And it was always them, whether it was Brexit, whether it was the Rwanda thing, it was always the Tory party that was stopping the Tory party doing what the Tory party wanted to do.
And also, we're seeing this difference. I mean, nothing that Labour have done this week has actually resulted in a material change, because it can't this quickly. All Labour can do is, someone mentioned secondary legislation. There's already been a little bit of that. So there are things that ministers can do without Parliament. They've already started to do it. So Ed Miliband has immediately reversed the effective ban on onshore wind farms. But we haven't had an onshore wind farm spring up. We won't have even had an application go in yet. So that will take time. The thing on the water companies, we have to hope that there will be a significant improvement in behaviour. But ultimately, all that's happened so far is Steve Reed has said this money's been ring fenced. So that money's going to be spent anyway. And what it's worth. The rest of the legislation, which allows Ofwat to withhold bonuses or for criminal charges to apply to executives who continually break the law, the monitoring or stuff like that. That will take time. So the only thing that can happen really quickly is that investment coming in. If people have, but then, even investors will want to know that this government's going to be stable. So no actual material change has happened to anyone's lives yet. So it's really based on, we're doing what Brexiteers are doing in a way. We've done this change and we'll see the benefits later on. It's because but in this case, we think the benefits will come.
There are actual benefits that are tangible that will actually happen
and make sense.
It makes sense.
But so that is it. So you're in that phase. But what I would say is, just because the Conservatives didn't even look like a government, the difference is immense. So it's been pointed out in polling that Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner's approval ratings actually went up after the election. So the way they've conducted themselves in government has actually boosted, whereas Boris Johnson went the other way.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson's approval rating fell after the 2019 election.
Yep. He's a good campaigner, but a terrible, terrible leader. And a terrible human being as well.
Yeah. So the way they've conducted themselves, because just the contrast, because the Conservatives were so unstatesmanlike, Labour just looking and feeling right, even before we've seen any benefits, has improved people's confidence, because we now have a government that looks like a government.
Yeah.
And isn't trying to score stupid political points.
Old Poy is agreeing with you. No, we've not had a government. You have to govern to be a government. What we had was a cartel. Can't argue with that. And also, Arctic Bear, thank you so much for the £5 super chat. If Parliament is up and running by Christmas, I am happy. So there you go. Patience, especially. But there are things that Labour.
There are some people
straight away.
Some people need things like now.
Yeah.
And so I do get the obviously there are people who are really struggling, and something going back to what we said earlier, something as simple as saying we're removing the 2-child cap would instantly. I mean, I saw something, for the cost of £1.3 billion would raise 250,000 kids out of poverty. I mean,
do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
My local MP, Mary Foy, has actually put a tweet out saying that she wants the 2 cap.
There's going to be an amendment put forward. Obviously, Labour could easily defeat that amendment.
Yeah.
I don't see the need to have a running on, because I tell you what it is. I should say but with the 2-child. So the way I looked at it was, I know that the policy is popular. It's very and even amongst Labour voters, 2019 Labour voters, because any polling out last year that said how Labour members feel about it was based on 2019. So people vote for Jeremy Corbyn. There's a lot of people do take that view. Oh, you have people then having kids and benefits just for a laugh. And it's like, so that is there in public. And if it was purely based on that, I would go, okay, I can see the political difficulty. However, Keir Starmer has been quite clear that he would, and I don't just mean a couple of years ago, I mean now, this week, that he would like to get rid of it. And the argument is we'll do it when we can economically. So he's saying there's no political objection to removing the cap. So he's not worried about the fact that the cap is popular. He feels that politically he can remove it. He's just saying, but we have to wait for the finances to be right. And it's like, 1.3 billion quid, mate. If that is all it is. And okay, I'm taking that from one source on the BBC article. But if that's all it is, you could do that extra. It's not going to hurt your... It's not, particularly after this extra boost to GDP in May. You could do that now without hurting any of your fiscal.
Someone pointed out Sterling has got stronger as well since Labour got in.
Indeed.
Alec Barrett, thank you very much for the last super chat of the show. Shift the 2 cap to 4 cap. Would that work? Just get rid of it.
I would just get rid of it. I mean, you could just change what the cap is, I guess. That seems like tinkering. Again, it's the same argument I would use about the puberty blockers thing. It's early in the parliamentary cycle. It's not going to cost you any votes at the next election.
Yeah.
It's although yes, it's a popular thing. It's not high saliency. It's not people's main thing. And then the economic argument is, remember, if you remove the child benefit cap, all of that money goes into the economy, because you're talking about giving that money to the people who will spend it.
Yes.
So it goes into the economy. Okay, not all of it comes back to the treasury, obviously, but a good chunk does. So that £1.3 billion figure, for example, is that literally what it costs? Or are you taking into account the money that still then comes back to the treasury via VAT?
Yeah.
Or income tax, because people with child benefit do work.
Yeah.
It's not all people who are unemployed. So I don't know how that counts. Does it count? I don't know about taxes on that to that level. But either way, VAT is still coming into the treasury. It's going to be spent on things. Some things will have VAT on them. So the Treasury gets some of it back. And that's the thing. When you're talking about the government spending money, that means giving money to people who will then immediately spend it in your local economy. It never costs as much as it sounds because there's always the extra tax revenues it generates.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that 1.3 billion takes that into account or not.
Yeah.
What is child benefits? Anyone? Because it does work out
It's
at
not
about
much.
£100 a week. Is that child benefit?
No, it's not a lot. It's really not a lot. It's
so in actual fact, it probably costs even less than that. I don't see if Labour can say that they want to remove it, and that the only thing is making sure the finances are in order. The finances are in order to do that.
Yeah.
I know there's going to be a lot of demands on things, and their difficulty, quite frankly, is public sector pay. That's their tricky one. That's their genuinely tricky one.
What's a whole new can of worms?
but the two-child cap, if they're not trying to make the argument that the policy itself is fine and they can deal with child poverty some other way, because I thought that was their argument last year. If that is not their argument, and that is not the argument Stan was putting forward today, I see no reason why not.
Old point.
And I just hope they do. I hope they don't have this fight. I hope they just go, yeah, we're getting rid of it.
Yeah. Old point in the chat saying Labour came and cleaned my streets and picked up rubbish and talked to us Tories, sent leaflets calling Labour lefty traitors. And Christine Cash, thank you very much for the cash, all the way from the United States of America. That's very kind of you. And abolition of the two-child cap in the King's Speech. An example of Labour over-delivering. That would be great to see. Okay, well, I'll be back at 9 o'clock tonight for the Labour Social. Are you going to be around tonight, Phil? Or got better things to do?
Spending time with my fiancée and doggies.
Oh, okay then. All right, well, I'll be here. There might be some others. Might be some more interesting other people, apart from me, hopefully, on tonight. But it'll be 9 o'clock, and I probably won't be as talkative as normal because I'm still trying to shake this bloody sore throat and cold. But anyway,
lockets, if you like.
I've got lockets. I literally have a pack of lockets there, and I've got a pack in my pocket that I've been actually eating. Anyway, so thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for all the chat. Give us a like on the way out. And Drew says he might be coming to Liverpool. Good to see you there, Drew, my faux bojo. And until next time, thanks, Phil. Thanks for imparting your wisdom. And I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.